A Question of Trust by Victor Canning. Victor Canning, who was a British novelist, right? A Question of Trust is the story of two thieves, right? It is the story of two thieves, whether their trust or their distrust, that you will find when you read the story. I would like you to analyze and conclude this. But one or two statements in the story, they are quite meaningful. So we have to understand that too. Just as, for example, here in the beginning, it is said that you must set a thief to catch a thief. You must set a thief to catch a thief. It is just like, you know, Anmol in Hindi, what we call it, लोहे को लोहा ही काटता है. हिंदी में सुना है आपने ये?
Yes, ma'am.
लोहे को लोहा ही काटता है. So what it means that if you have to set a thief, if you have to overcome a thief, then you need to have a thief, right? जैसे कि आप कहते हैं ना, चोर को चोर ही पकड़ता है, right? It is also said that there is honor among thieves. Now, what is this honor among thieves? This is the almost last sentence of the story. So let us read the story first. And by the end of the story, I hope that you will be able to understand and analyze this statement, that what is this honor among thieves, right? Okay. Now here in the story, the protagonist is Horace Danby. Horace Danby, 50 years old man, quite respectable. He earns good respect in the society. He is a decent man otherwise. But the one flaw, one shortcoming that he has in his character is he is unscrupulous. Meaning he is not honest. I could say not honest also, but I just want to add to your vocabulary. Dishonest meaning unscrupulous, right? So he was unscrupulous. Why? Because he had a very queer kind of hobby. What? Reading. Okay, reading is not queer kind of hobby, but he was passionate about reading some rare and expensive books. And he didn't have money to buy those books. So what he had chosen? Which path he had chosen? To thieve. He would steal. He would rob. He would not rob every Tom, Dick, and Harry. He would not rob anyone who comes his way. He would just observe and explore and find out some rich people. And then why he would rob or he would steal, not to harm them, just to get some money so that he could buy those books, which he could not afford otherwise. So isn't it a queer kind of hobby? So when he is using that money for buying the books, that depicts that he is really otherwise a decent man. His intention is not to misuse the money in drinking or eating or gambling, etc. No. So that is an indicator of his being a good man. But at the same time, when he affords the money for buying by means of robbery or stealing, then that makes him lose his respect. We cannot respect such a man. Isn't it, Anmol?
Yes, ma'am.
So yes, definitely intention is good, but the ends and means that he is using, they are not right. So this is the story about that. Okay, yes, let's start here. Would you read?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please. Start.
Everyone thought that Horace Denby was a good, honest citizen. He was about 50 years old and unmarried, and he lived with a housekeeper who worried over his health. In fact, he was usually very well and happy except for attacks of hay fever in summer. He made locks and was successful enough at his business to have two helpers. Yes, Horace Denby was good and respectable, but not completely honest.
Yes. Now, Horace Danby, as I told you, he had earned a very good reputation in the society. People would respect him thinking that he was a good man, honest man, but actually he was not honest at all, right? He was, as I told you, he was 50 years old and he was a bachelor. Bachelor meaning
Not married.
not married. So another word added to your vocabulary, right? He had been keeping a housekeeper to take care of him, and he was healthy. He had no health problems except for attacks of hay fever. Hay fever is the seasonal allergy. He was allergic. How allergy? For example, in the pollen months, you know that somewhere in the month of March or April, or it depends from place to place. In the pollen months, when the crops are harvested, so there are pollens in the air, and they cause allergy to the people. And the people who are allergic to this, what happens? They start sneezing. So that kind of allergy he had, right? So this allergy is like he would sneeze maybe because of the fragrance of the flowers. He would sneeze maybe because of the smell of the crops. He would sneeze maybe because of the smell of of something spicy being cooked, etc. He made locks. He made locks, so he was a locksmith. You might have heard of blacksmith. Do you know who is a blacksmith?
Yes, ma'am.
Right? So he is a blacksmith, and after blacksmith, he was particularly a locksmith. He was making things with iron, but he was making locks. So since he is making locks, he is locksmith. And he was so successful, his business of making locks was flourishing. So flourishing that he had kept two helpers also. So in this way, he was quite respectable in the society, but he was not honest. Now, what was wrong he was doing that he was not honest? Let us see that. Yes, carry on, please.
15 years ago, Horace had served his first and only sentence in a prison library. He loved rare, expensive books, so he robbed a safe every year. Each year he planned carefully just what he would do, stole enough to last for 12 months, and secretly bought the books he loved through an agent.
Yes, 15 years before, he had been sentenced to prison. He was imprisoned for stealing, right? That was for the first time he had been to the prison. And what he did while being during his stay in the prison, he had spent his time in the prison library. The prisoners, and because the prisons, they are no more called the jails or the prisons. They are actually called the reformatories now. Gandhiji had given this name to the jails. He called them, he said that they should be called reformatories. Reformatories, गांधी जी ने जो हिंदी में नाम दिया था इसका, वो था सुधार गृह. तो सुधार गृह को हम reformatory कहते हैं, right? And where the prisoners are kept and they are reformed before they are freed from the jail, so that they are able to live a respectable life when they come out of the jail. This was the purpose. So when he was in the prison, he preferred library. He spent his time in the library. Definitely he would get a lot many books to read. So that has inculcated his interest in reading. So he has got a good reading habit. He loved rare, expensive books. He would read those very books which are not easily available. and they are very expensive, which are not affordable. So he robbed a safe every year. Now, this very habit of, this very hobby of reading rare and expensive books, he developed when he was in the jail. When he got freed, when he came out of the jail, he had a strong urge to read. He could not curb it. So he wanted books, but he didn't have the money to buy those books. So what he did, he robbed a safe every year. Every year he planned that one safe, one major stealing he would make. You see that if he had been that dishonest, or if he had been a professional or a regular cheat or a thief, then he would have kept stealing. But no, he would not do it. He would do just one robbery, and he would get so much money that he would get enough money to buy those books. If with that amount of money he could buy the books, he was not going to rob anymore. So his level of satisfaction was to get that much money that he could buy the books, right? So every year he planned very carefully just what he would do. What was his plan? That he would steal enough to last for 12 months. That he would steal this much money that he can easily spend, he can easily live the whole year. That he would live a comfortable life for the whole year, and secretly bought the books he loved through an agent. Whatever the money he earned by robbery, he had been investing, he had been spending that money on buying the books. And those very books he had been getting through an agent. Now, here it has been said that he would buy the book secretly. Can you just guess why do you think he would buy the book secretly? Yes, Anmol, why would he buy the book secretly?
Don't know.
He would buy the book secretly because they were expensive books, right? And if the people have come to know that he was buying expensive books, they would definitely raise their eyebrows. They would definitely question him. How could he afford? He's not that rich. Where did he get the money from? Because he had been getting the money through unfair means, isn't it? He had been stealing and then getting money, and then he could afford to buy the books. But that was wrong means. Since he had been getting that money by wrong means, by robbing, that's why he would buy those very books secretly, so that the people would not get to know that he had stolen the money. Tomorrow, if they follow him, if they get to know about it, they would question him, and he would have to be answerable. So just to avoid that very situation, he would not tell anyone, he would just secretly buy the books which he wanted to read. I hope it is clear.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is an important MCQ type of question, okay? Yes, come to the next.
Now, walking in the bright July sunshine, he felt sure that this year's robbery was going to be as successful as all the others. For 2 weeks, he had been studying the house at Shotover Grange, looking at its rooms, its electric wiring, its paths, and its garden. This afternoon, the two servants who remained in the Grange while the family was in London had gone to the movies. Horace saw that them go, and he felt happy in spite of a little tickle of hay fever in his nose. He came out from behind the garden wall, his tools carefully packed in a bag on his back.
Yes. Now in this passage, Anmol, you will learn not only how he had planned and how he had carried out his robbery, but it also reveals, it also highlights how the thieves, how the robbers, they plan their robberies. It's not so that on one particular day, they'll just break into the house and steal whatever they get. No, it's not that. It's done with a complete planning, a very careful plan. For days, they keep on observing. For days, they keep on following the people in the house. They keep on hovering around the house, observing each and everything at each and every time. They would follow the people when they are at home, when they are going, where they are going, how much time they are going to spend, etc., etc. Right? Now here, now walking in the bright July sunshine, it was the July month, and in the afternoon, just imagine in the month of July in the afternoon, how hot it is. He felt sure that this year's robbery was going to be as successful as all the others. He was very confident that the house he is going to rob, or the robbery that he is going to carry out, he is going to be successful. Why? Because of his meticulous planning. Because he has done massive planning for that. What had he done? For 2 weeks now, you can get a question. Do remember, that's why listen carefully. There can be a question, how did he plan his robbery, or how could he plan his every robbery? Right, here is the answer. For 2 weeks, he had been studying the house at Shotover Grange. Shotover Grange is a building in a farmhouse, or you can say farmhouse itself. Farmhouse, anyway, houses, farm, lawns, and kitchen gardens, etc. And there in the farmhouse is the residential complex, that building that is called Grange, right? So for 2 weeks, he had been studying the house at Shotover Grange. At Shotover Grange, the house he wanted to rob, he had been studying, he had been observing. He had been searching all information. इसको हम कहते हैं, he was doing recce of the house. Recce of the house meaning searching and gathering information about the place by hovering around. Right? When a house is stolen, and when we discover what all things have been stolen and how the thief has taken care of the timings and all, then what we say, इसका मतलब वो काफी पहले टाइम से उसने अच्छी खासी रेकी कर रखी है इसकी, right? तो वो रेकी करना meaning he had searched, he has gathered information. So studying the house meaning he had been gathering information. He had been observing very closely each and everything, looking at its rooms. He had been trying to look into the rooms. Electric wiring, a very important thing. Why do you think it is important for him to see where electric wiring is done?
Ma'am, because in some houses, for safety, electric wiring is also done at robber's place.
What do you think is the robber going to do with the electric wiring?
Ma'am, he would cut the electric wire.
Yeah, right, right. Why would he cut the wires?
To don't get a shock.
To don't get a shock. Actually, to get disconnected. To disconnect the telephones, cameras, CCTV cameras, right? Don't you see the people, they have installed CCTV cameras, yet the thief breaks into the house? Because the thieves also know, they are familiar with all these gadgets, Anmol. So the very first thing the thief does is, when he enters, he either covers the camera or he just cuts the wire so that there can be no coverage in the camera. And then he also disconnects the telephone wires so that you cannot call if there is somebody around in the house. One cannot call. One cannot make a call and raise alarm, right? So you see that all these things, he was very careful that he has to study the rooms, where is what, and then he had to find out the electric wiring so that when he goes in, he would cut the wires. And its paths and its garden. Garden, the garden to enter and then to escape. Sorry. This afternoon, the two servants who remained in the Grange while the family was in London had gone to the movies. He knew that the family was not there. The people of the family, the owners of the house, they were away to London. And there were left behind two servants who were taking care of the house. Those two servants, they had gone to the movies. He had learned about all this, that they had gone to the movies. And with this knowledge, he might have calculated the time after how long will they come back. So how much time is there with him when he can rob the house successfully. For I saw them go and he felt happy in spite of a little tickle of hay fever in his nose. He had observed, he had noticed that the two servants, they were leaving the house. He was very happy, though he had got a stroke of hay fever. He had felt sensation in his nose. He was about to sneeze. He came out from behind the garden wall. You see, he was looking for the garden. I told you for entrance and escape. This is what he did. From the garden wall, he jumped into the house. His tools carefully packed in a bag on his back. He was carrying his bag with tools. That means he was well equipped with all the tools he thought he would require while he carries out the robbery. What kind of tools do you think he might be carrying or he might need?
Cutter.
Okay. Knife, hammer,
Hammer.
screwdrivers, right? All these tools.
Yes, ma'am.
Because he had to open the locks. He had to open the locks. Yes. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes. This is what he knew the rooms. What else did he know beforehand about the house? You will read. Yes. Carry on.
There were about 15,000 pounds worth of jewels in the Grange safe. If he sold them one by one, he expected to get at least 5,000, enough to make him happy for another year. There were 3 interesting books coming up for sale in the autumn. Now he would get the money he wanted to buy them.
Yes. Here it is very clear. It is very obvious why he was committing this robbery. Because 3 new books were coming in the market and he wanted to purchase those books. They were expensive. He didn't have money. So by robbery, he wanted to earn the money so that he could buy the books. He was so passionate about reading that he could not resist himself. He had this pre-knowledge that there were about 15,000 pounds worth of jewels in the Grange safe. In the locker of the house, there was the jewelry worth 15,000 pounds. 15,000 pounds is a big amount. Pretty good amount for him. Even if he sold one by one, he expected to get at least 5,000, enough to make him happy for another year. That means 1 jewel is enough for 1 year. Because that very year he would get 5,000 pounds and he can easily purchase those very books. So it means that the next 2 more years, he won't have to commit any robbery if he gets this much money. There were three very interesting books coming up for sale in the autumn. Now he would get the money he wanted to buy them. So he actually needed the money not to misuse, not for a wrong habit. It was for a good reading habit. Yet, would you approve of the means of robbery to earn the money?
No, ma'am.
No. Ideally, it's not correct. It's not correct. It's unprincipled. It's unethical. It's an offense. It's a crime. It's a cheating. Right? He should resist his hobby. We should have the hobbies according to our pocket. Isn't it? We should keep our hobbies according to our pocket. So this is one lesson we learn. Yes, carry on, please.
He had seen the housekeeper hang the key to the kitchen door on a hook side. He put on a pair of gloves, took the key, and opened the door. He was always careful not to leave any fingerprints.
Yes, carry on.
A small dog was lying in the kitchen. It stirred, made a noise, and moved its tail in a friendly way.
Yes. Yes,
All,
yes.
all right, Sherry, Horace said as he passed. All you had to do, keep dogs quiet, was to call them by their right names and show them love.
Yes. Now what it is, he had been observing each and everything. When the two servants, they were leaving the house, he had noticed them, he had observed them, and he found that they had been hanging the key to the kitchen door on a hook outside. So it was very easy, all fortune in his favor. It would be very easy to enter the house. He doesn't have to break the lock because he knows where the key is. What he did, he put on a pair of gloves and he took the key and opened the door. Why did he wear the pair of gloves?
To not leave the fingerprints on the key.
Right. So you see, it's a careful planning. It's a careful planning, and Horace Danby becoming very cautious. Very cautious. He knows everything where he can be caught. He could be in trouble. So he was wearing gloves so that no fingerprints are left anywhere in the room. Key he had got very easily, and he opened the door and he just sneaked in. And when he entered the kitchen, he came across the dog of the house. The dog, when he saw the stranger, Horace Danby, of course, was a stranger to the dog. The dog stirred, the dog moved, made a little noise. But soon the dog was calmed down by Horace Danby when Horace called him as Sherry. Oh, what does that mean? Horace Danby knows the dog's name also. So you see, this is what he had studied. He had gathered, he had got to know the name of the dog also. When you call a dog with the name, then the dog becomes friendly because the dog thinks that you are not a stranger, but you are known, someone familiar, right? So he called him, all right, Sherry, just to express him his friendliness. Horace said as he passed, all you had to do to keep dogs quiet was to call them by their right names. He said, this is the way. If you want to quieten the dogs, if you want to calm the dogs down, if you want to be friendly with them, just call them with their names. And show your compassion, show your love towards a dog. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So he has learnt all this, right? Yes, carry on.
The safe was in the drawing room, behind a rather poor painting. Horace wondered for a moment whether he should collect pictures instead of books, but they took up too much room. In a small house, books were better.
Yes.
There, There was a great bowl of flowers on the table, and Horace felt his nose tickle. He gave a little sneeze and then put down his bag. He carefully arranged his jewels. He had 4 hours before the servants returned.
Yes. Now he had already known where the locker was and where the jewels were and the worth of the value of the jewels. Now the thing here is, how did he learn where the locker was? You see that this is what the thieves did not need to find out, because many a times the rich people, when they appear, they are celebrities, they are rich people. When they appear for some interviews, for some columns, they speak, then they just boast about themselves and unknowingly they reveal all these very facts. And this is what he had learned it from. The safe was in the drawing room behind a rather poor painting. So he didn't have to exert much. He had already done his homework. He knew that the locker was the safe where the jewels were kept. It was behind a painting. The painting, poor painting, not very good looking. Why? It had been deliberately covered with a poor painting so that the thieves do not suspect. But what if you have already told the world on a TV screen or in a magazine or in a newspaper interview? Horace wondered for a moment whether he should collect pictures instead of books. When he saw the paintings, first he thought that he should collect some pictures, some paintings from here, because the paintings were also expensive. He should just forget the idea of books. But they took up too much room. But then he realized that the paintings, they need a lot of space. And he had a small house. So books, it was manageable. He could keep them properly. There was a bowl of flowers on the table. And when he came close to the flowers, he felt his nose tickle, meaning he felt that he was about to sneeze. And yes, he did sneeze. Then he put down his bag, which carried all his tools. He arranged his tools properly, one by one, whichever the tool he needed, he would pick up. He had 4 hours before the servants returned. He knew that the servants had gone for a movie. Where they had gone, he knew. So he had estimated that after 4 hours, they would be back. So he had pretty good time of 4 hours to carry out his robbery. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, carry on.
The safe was not going to be hard to open. After all, he had lived with locks and safes all his life. The
The
bulkhead
burglar
alarm was poorly built.
alarm. Alarm is Punjabi word. Alarm.
Alarm was poorly built. He went into the hall to cut its wire. He came back and sneezed loudly as the smell of the flowers came to him again. How foolish people are when they own valuable things. Horace thought. A magazine article had described this house, giving a plan of all the rooms and a picture of this room. The writer had even mentioned that the painting hid a safe.
Yes, carry on.
But Horace found that the flowers were hindering him in his work. He buried his face in his handkerchief.
Yes.
Then,
Yes, wait, please. Now, so far as the safe was concerned, it was more difficult for him. It was very simple job for him. Why? He knew the location, and opening the door locks was no problem because he was a locksmith, right? He was a locksmith. He knew how to lock and unlock them. The burglar alarm was there. Anti-thief alarm was set up there, was installed. It was poorly built. He knew it. So what he did, he knew that the moment he is near the alarm or he touched anything, the alarm would start buzzing. So what he did, first of all, he went to the hall and he cut its wire. He disconnected the burglar alarm. Now he can easily move around, touch upon anything, and no alarm is going to buzz because he had already cut the wire. He came back, he was still sneezing. Why? Because of the smell of flowers that were kept on the table. Now here you see how foolish people are. Writer says how foolish people are when they own valuable things. Horace thought. Horace also thought that how foolish the people are. They own valuable things and they reveal it to the world. They don't keep it a secret. A magazine article had described this house, how he learned why he had chosen this house only. It was through a magazine article, he was reading a magazine article from where he had learned about this house, where he had learned what lies where in the house. Because the landlord of the house, they had described this house, giving a plan of all the rooms and a picture of this room. Which room? Where the safe was hidden behind the poor painting. The writer had even mentioned that the painting hid a safe. In that article, it was mentioned that behind the painting was a safe, a locker. So the locker is hidden by the painting. Now, what is it? It is, you know, that it's very fortunate for a robber, for a thief like Horace Denby. It was just like as if you are serving everything on a silver platter. And he was ready to enjoy this. But Horace found that the flowers were hindering him in his work. He started his process of stealing, but he was not able to do it smoothly because of his hay fever, because of his sneezing, due to the presence of the flowers there. He buried his face. He covered his face with a hanky. Then he heard a voice say from the doorway, "What is it? A cold or hay fever?" Then there appeared someone on the door. And the lady said, "What is it?" And when she saw Horace Danby covering his face with a handkerchief, she remarked, "What is it? Do you have cold or is it hay fever?" Before he could think, Horace said hay fever and found himself sneezing again. He told her, "It's hay fever." The voice went on, "You can cure it with a special treatment, you know, if you find out just what plant gives you this disease." Now, who do you think the lady must be? The one who is showing her concern for his hay fever.
Ma'am, lady who lives in that house.
The lady who lives in that house. This is what Horace Danby thinks. This is as a reader we also think that the lady must be the owner of the house, the landlady of the house. Now, if the landlady was there and she had found Horace Danby with all the tools and sneaking into the house, wearing the gloves, what do you think should be the reaction of the lady?
He must be called the police.
She would call the police. First of all, she would panic. Isn't it? She would panic. "Hey, who you are? What are you doing here?" She would snub him. Then she would threaten, "I'll call the police." Isn't it? But the lady didn't do any such thing. She had been very pally, very friendly with Horace Danby. She was rather giving him advice regarding his hay fever. If you find out just what plant gives you the disease, I think you would better see a doctor. She gives him an advice that he should try to find out which plant he is allergic to which plant. If he discovers that, then he would be taking precautions against that and he would recover. If you are serious about your work, I heard you from the top of the house. just now. She said, I saw you, I noticed you jumping from the top of the house. I heard your jumping when you sneaked into the house. But there is no panic, there is no fear. She is not screaming, she is not reacting. She is very cool and calm. So please think over who that lady could be, right? And tomorrow we will read how much successful Horace Danby could be, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Any problem?
No, ma'am.
Okay, fine.